Now, it automatically sets it up where 2 and 3 are together, but page 1 and 4 are separated, kind of like a front and back or beginning and end. We want to change this. To do this, you have to kind of click and drag them together. However, it won't automatically let you do that. Up here when I'm on my Pages tab, up on the top right, you see a little hamburger menu icon. Click on that, and there's a little section that says Allow Document Pages to Shuffle, and it's checked. We want to turn this off, so I'm going to click on that, uncheck it. Now I can click on any page and move it around. And you'll see the little line move so I'm clicking and holding down and dragging it around. I could put it beside these 3. Now I have 3 pages together. I don't want to do that. I want to bring it all the way up to the top so it's connected side by side. So this is how you get the 2 spreads here. Okay, now also on your Pages tab, you'll notice you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, but above that you have what says A parent. These are what's called parent pages or master pages. When you double click on the parent pages, it shows them here. Anything that you put on here on a parent page, it will show up on all of your other pages. So I made this magenta rectangle here on this left page. Now I go back to my 2 spreads and voila, it shows up automatically on both of those left pages. Now, again, this is a benefit as tool specific to InDesign. Because imagine if you have a book of 300 pages and you want to put some sort of line on the side. You don't want to do that 300 times, right? InDesign knows and it's made to make your life more simple. So you do something, you put it on the parent page, and it shows up automatically on every page. This is also how you use and put in page numbers. You don't want to type in every page number for a whole book. There's a specific way of putting in the page numbers on the parent pages, and then they'll automatically put in each number for each page. Okay, the reason why I start with this is because this is how we're going to set up our document with a grid. Now, when I say grid, I don't really mean a literal grid, like graph paper or something. I'm not talking something so literal. In making a grid for layout editorial design, you actually have control or flexibility over what the grid looks like. The grid is a set of lines that you create that will kind of show you where your, let's say, titles, headlines go, where your columns of your text go, and it will keep your design consistent through every page of your publication, or at least through one specific article. You know, because you could have a magazine where each article has a different illustrations and a different kind of design. Sometimes they do that. But within one design, you want consistency. You don't want headlines or subheads, body copy just kind of all over the place randomly. That's not good design. You want it consistent. You want it unified. So on the parent pages, I've double clicked. This is my parent pages here. I'm going to go up to Layout and then Create Guides. And a little menu pops up. I'm going to turn on Preview so I can see them. Now on the Canvas assignment, you'll notice it shows 8 rows, 6 columns. So where it says rows, I'm just going to make the number 8 and columns 6. This will get you very close to a modular kind of square grid. I would recommend, right now it has it fit guides to page. That's fine. I'd probably recommend changing this to margins, and you'll see the difference when I change that from, you can see the blue lines, right? Yeah, from margins to page, it fits those 8 rows and 6 columns inside the magenta border, which is the 1/2 inch margins. This is a good idea, even though we're not actually making a magazine or something. If you open a magazine or a book, you don't want the text going all the way to the center, because that's in the binding. You can't read that. You want to have it further away. You want to have space from the edges, top and bottom, left and right, whether the left is the edge or the right edge, and then the binding in the center. That's why margins are there, so that you kind of keep everything within the safe area. It's just, things just usually don't look good, like page numbers and the text, if it's too close to one of the edges. So I would recommend changing it to margins. When you press OK, your grid looks like this. Actually, let me just, as an example, what I was talking about, you could, let's say, make your grid more vertical like this, or I have 5 rows, 8 columns. Now, I put in a specific number in the Canvas assignment for a reason, so that it's more of like a literal grid. But when you're designing something, you know, an editorial or whatever, you have control over this. You could potentially make your columns more or less, same with rows, and you have a different design, and your text, your titles will line up differently, and that's totally fine. So it doesn't have to be a literal grid. Since I made these guides on the master pages, or the parent pages, if I go back to my regular pages, the guides are automatically applied to each one. I prefer to go ahead and use the type tool to create the columns that I'll be using for laying out the text. You can always change this later, and we will change it later, but just for right now, so I'm kind of looking at, I see these 3 squares here, so there's 6 between the margins. So it's 3 and 3, and with a gutter in between. So I'm going to just use this as a 2-column layout. I'm going to click over the top left of this corner, drag down, and it automatically snaps into place to the guides. That makes a text box. Now I can press Command V to paste. So my article is in there. Now the article is much longer than this section right here. So at the bottom right of your text box, if you have extra text, there'll be a little red square with a plus sign in it. You can click that, and then now I click and drag that text box in this column, and you can do it until the article is finished. Just clicking, snapping it to. So actually it worked out pretty well, where this article at this size, here's the thing, this is just the default size with a default typeface, and it filled up just about 3.5 pages. If you get an article that is even longer and it's too long for 4 pages, it's completely okay to just edit it down, cut out some sections. we're not using this. I'm not reading anybody's articles, so don't worry about that. It's just to have filler text that is actual, not gibberish. It's actual content from somewhere online. I'm going to literally just click and drag this. You don't have to do it this way. There's other ways of importing imagery. I like viewing the file in Finder and then just clicking and dragging it over to the InDesign page. So when I do that, it doesn't automatically place it. You see the image kind of connected to my cursor. I can just click once and it will place the image, but look how big it is. I placed it and it's so big it's taking over both pages and way off the screen. What I recommend, instead of clicking and just placing it, you can click and drag a certain size of what the image will be when it's placed. So for example, let's say I do want it to take up the whole page. I can click outside somewhere here, maybe to the edge of the bleed. Now I'm clicking and dragging, and it shows the blue box. I'm going to drag it all the way to the edge of the page, or actually it won't let me. I can change that later. It's okay. Then when I let go, then it places the image at the size that I dragged that box. So let me just adjust this a little bit. Okay, now here's something about InDesign. You'll notice it works a little different from other programs. So I just place this image. If I hover my cursor over the corner to resize it, you'll think, okay, that's the normal way to resize. So I'm resizing it, and nothing happened. This little blue box got bigger, but the image stayed the same size. InDesign works a little differently. So the blue box is basically the cropping of the image. And I'll show you how that affects it in a little bit. But first, we do want to make the image itself bigger. So I like to use the free transform tool. It looks like this icon right here. It's keyboard shortcut E. Free transform tool. Then when I click on the corner, I'm holding down Shift to keep it proportions constrained. Now I can resize it. Now let's go back and look at that blue cropping box, because you'll notice with the dimensions of this image, it's actually taller than the page size. I can click on this top box here to change the cropping, drag it down to the bleed. That's where it doesn't resize it, it just crops the image. Now when I hover over it, you'll notice this circle that appears in the middle of a photograph or something. When you click on the circle one time, you'll see a brown box. This is the original size of the image. I can click and move the image within that cropping. So let's say I'm moving away to the edge. That cropping box is still there, and it crops this image to the bottom right, but the edge of the image, I've moved it all the way over to the bottom right. Move it back up. Let's say I make this really big. I can move around the image inside that cropping box, and it keeps the page the same. So no matter where I move it, no matter what size I make it, it fits within that cropping box I made as the page size. By the way, if you want to turn off and on the guides so that you can, let's say, see what your image looks like without the blue lines over it, it's keyboard shortcut Command and semicolon. That turns off the guides. Now I can see the image placed there. You'll notice there's several weird things that happen when I just copy and paste text in InDesign. First off, we want to get rid of hyphenation. Yes, we're kind of used to it at this point. However, something like this where it says I per and then chased a new planner, like, I mean, chase is its own word. Like, imagine if you just kind of like your eyes fell to this line in this article and someone's talking about chasing a new planner. No, we want to get rid of hyphenation. Yes, it does have its uses. It's not like it's always bad, but if all possible, let's get rid of it. So I'm gonna click at my text, Command A to select all of it. I'm going to look for my paragraph tab, which is not here. If you don't see it, go up to Window, and then type in Tables, and then Paragraph. And then at the bottom left, you'll see where it says hyphenate. Just uncheck that. Some of the text will change. Without hyphenation, the words will move around a little bit. They'll push some stuff down. In typesetting, there are 3 problems to avoid at all costs. And they have weird names. They're called widows, orphans, and runts. There's a bunch of runts here. I can show you those. Runts are words, single words that fall at the bottom of a paragraph that are just by themselves. Although it is a little bit debatable, some people don't mind them. I hate these guys, okay? Because when you have one word by itself, the bottom of a paragraph, it draws too much attention. It looks like it messes with the hierarchy. So when you see one word by itself, it's like your eyes go straight to that word. It's kind of separate. We don't want these bad typesetting messing around with how our eyes fall across the page. Next up, widows and orphans. This is a widow. This is an orphan. A line of text, a single line by itself at the end of a column, or a single line by itself at the top of a column. So runts, widows, orphans. We got to get rid of these. We do that by adjusting tracking and potentially other more drastic measures like adjusting the actual words, like changing the words or making new spaces in the paragraphs, things like that. But ideally, you want to fix it with tracking. So, for example, let's start at the top with fixing this runt. Because this one word is by itself, you can either, oh, by the way, I forgot, tracking is the space between letters and words. So you can either decrease the amount of space between the letters and words, and that will make more room up here, and the word time will jump up to the last line, and then we'll be with the others. You can increase the tracking, increase the space, and then it will push other words down so that there'll be more words on this last line. I would start with that because if you go the other way, you start decreasing the space, then things can start getting too tight and squished together. So to get rid of time, I'm going to click in here and select just this one paragraph. Then I have to go to my type window. I don't see it here, so I have to go to Window, type in Tables, and Character. So the character window shows you the typeface you're using. That I have this selected. So it's Avenir. Book size, it's 12 points. The tracking is automatically at 0. It shows the leading, which is the space between lines. We don't really have to worry about that too much right now. But if I go to tracking and I increase it by 10, it does it in multiples of 10. So if you don't want it to go from 0 to 10, you can select it here and do something like 5. But 10 was working well. So when I increased it from 0 to 10, you see it pushed a few more words down here. So now the paragraph looks better. It's not just this one thing by itself that draws attention. It looks like a nicely shaped paragraph. If I go the other way, let's see if it will work. Yes, I go to -10, decrease the space, so it pushed or pulled the word time up to the line before it, which is also works fine, nicely spaced and shaped paragraph. Okay, does that make sense? All right. Same thing with widows and orphans. Actually, because I adjusted the spacing in there, it pushed everything up, so now I lost that widow orphan. So let me go ahead and put it back. I'll just use a 10. Okay, so here we go. This one here, this one here. You actually have a little bit more flexibility. You can select a bunch of text, multiple paragraphs, increase the tracking, and it pushed it all of that down. Now we have the line starts up here. Or let's see what happens if we decrease it. I had to go to -20 that time, and then it pulled up a few more lines. Now it's still not great, but it's doable. The other thing you can do, instead of adjusting tracking, depending on the article, I could just say this paragraph ends right here, and then I just press enter. So it ends there, and now it just pushes the next line to the top here. You may also notice, depending on the spacing, let's say there was an extra space there, sometimes the top of a paragraph will start not at the top of the column. If you do that, if you see that, just put your cursor here, just press backspace to get rid of that extra space and move it to the top. To make a drop cap, it's on the paragraph tab. So I just put my cursor at the beginning. It's the bottom left here. If I hover over it, drop cap, number of lines. If I increase this, it starts with the word I, which is probably not a great example. It just looks like a line. Actually, I'll change that so it's the letter A. And this is how you make drop caps. You can make as many lines. You know, if it's just like 2 or 3, that's cool. I'm just gonna type in, like, I see the word realize, so I'm gonna make the subhead for this paragraph realizations. This is where subheads you can add a little flair to them. You may have this section a different color or something. You know, we make it more bold, a few sizes larger. So, you know, you can have something kind of like this. Maybe there's, yeah, these different sections. You know, it's an option. Maybe I would have my drop cap the same color as well, so it's consistent. This adds, I love using the word, it adds spice, because I love peppers. But so when I say it adds a little spice to the design, you get what I'm saying, right? It breaks up the paragraphs. Our eyes go directly to the colorful things. The things that are a little bit larger. It adds hierarchy to the design. It also helps us kind of keep our place. When there's just too much text, sometimes it's just easy for our eyes to kind of get lost in all of it. So it's nice to have these subheads that kind of help us have little markers throughout. So I recommend stuff like that as well. You have flexibility. You can, let's say, make some of these columns shorter. Oh, and this is where, let me turn on my grids. Let's say I want to add another image right here. I might make my text line up to, let's say, this line of the grid. Especially, I did not start the paragraphs right at the top of the page. I like having this kind of breathing room up here. It aligns with this guide. I have this space, and I can easily continue it so it's consistent here. Those guides are the same place, so I know all of the columns are starting at the exact same height. That's why the grid is very important.